before. Hopefully by now you've gone onto the Pobble website and you've looked at today's picture. You won't be able to see it from there probably, but I've printed it out for myself so that I can see it when I'm doing my writing today. It's of a rather unusual looking egg that's hatched. We can't see what's come out of it yet, but I can see there is a girl in the image too, and a lot of other birds that to me look like crows circling her in the sky. It's a very dark and mysterious image. Now what I'd like you to focus on today is the sentence challenge. It looks at fronted adverbials. I'm going to ask you to remind yourself now of what a fronted adverbial is. You've all learnt about these already in school this year, so pause the video and either talk to someone that might be near you or just think about what is a fronted adverbial. Hopefully you reminded yourself that it's not a full sentence and it does not make sense on its own. It is a clause, but not a main clause. Your teacher may have called it a subordinating clause, or they may have just told you that it's a phrase for now. It's an adverbial phrase and it comes at the front of a sentence. That's why we call it a fronted adverbial. Sometimes we use them in other areas of the sentence, but today we're going to look at using them at the front. They can tell us where, when, or how something is happening. You might choose to focus on one of these in your writing today, or you might have so many ideas that you have lots of different ones that tell your reader where something's happening, how it's happening, or when something is happening. It's up to you. I'm going to show you now how I would go about doing my writing today, so that you've got an idea of where to start. The first thing I need to do when I'm writing my sentences is I need to think about what my main clause is going to be first. This is the part of the sentence that would make sense on its own. It might be a short sentence, or it might be slightly extended. It's up to you. To do this, I'm going to look at the picture and think about what I can see is happening. I'm not going to overcomplicate it. I just need a simple sentence that tells me what's happening in the picture. I've already thought about some, and I've written them up on a sentence strip nice and big so you can see them. The first one I thought of was, the egg started to crack. So I wrote my main clause down. Then I thought of one more, so I've got a couple to get me going. The next one I thought of was, the creature emerged from the egg. I looked on the Pobble website and found this in the story starter that they'd given for some other people to try. All I did was look at the picture and think about what I can see is happening. I want you to pause the video now, and in your book I'd like you to write some main clauses. These are sentences that just make sense on their own. Look at the picture and write some sentences of what you can see happening in the image. Pause the video and do that now. Great. Hopefully you've got several sentences in your book now ready to get going. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to think about how we can use a fronted adverbial to add detail to this sentence. Remember, it might tell us where it's happening, when it happened, or how it's happening. I'm going to remind myself of the first main clause that I thought of, and mine was, the egg started to crack. Now, using my own imagination and what I can see in front of me, I'm going to think about how I can add a fronted adverbial onto the start of that sentence to give the reader extra detail. The one that I thought of earlier when I was doing my writing was this one, beneath the circling crows. I looked at the picture and I saw the egg starting to crack, and I thought, where is that happening? I noticed that above the egg were the crows circling, so I turned this into a fronted adverbial that says, beneath the circling crows. I'm going to replace that just above my main clause for now, and we'll come back and write that as a full sentence in a moment. I'm going to show you a couple of extras that I thought of as well. For my next main clause, I thought about the creature emerging from the egg and how I can again add detail to my sentence. either telling my reader where, when, or how that is happening. So here's the idea I thought of, with a gentle cracking noise. So I wanted to tell my reader what they could hear when the creature emerged from the egg. Again, I'm going to place that above my main clause for now. Now, I don't have any further main clauses, but I thought, what if I didn't want to use one of these French adverbials? Are there any other options? And the answer, of course, was yes. There are always other French adverbials you can use to extend your sentence and give more detail to the reader. So I went back to my second main clause and thought of a different option that I could use. And the one I came up with this time was using my knowledge of adverbs, but I didn't just use one adverb, I used slowly and mysteriously together. So instead of using this one, I could also use my second option. It's up to me. I'm going to ask you to pause the video now and just have a little think about some of the French adverbials you could use for the main clauses that you wrote down earlier. Hopefully you spent a little time to do that. That's the tricky part of today's writing. It takes a little bit of time to think about your French adverbials, but don't forget to use the picture to help you. You don't need to create something new. The prompt is there to support you with your ideas. The final thing I'm going to show you, and the final thing that you're going to do today, is you're going to work out how we can write this as a full sentence. Because in our books, we don't write the French adverbial there and then start a new line. It becomes a whole sentence. So watch now as I do this with my first one. I know that the French adverbial comes at the start of the sentence, so I can start my sentence with this adverbial phrase. I always start my sentence with a capital letter. I'm not changing my French adverbial, I'm just copying the one that I already thought of earlier, and I'm now going to complete the sentence. So my French adverbial was beneath the circling crows. You will notice that I'm looking above, just back at what I already created earlier, not changing the writing at all. A key element of French adverbials that you already know about is the comma that comes after the adverbial phrase. You mustn't forget that, because that helps your reader understand what's the added detail and what's the main clause. Now, when I write my main clause, I notice that when I first thought of it, it had a capital letter because it was a sentence on its own. But now it's become part of my extended sentence. So I'm going to drop that capital letter down to a lowercase because it's no longer the start of my sentence, it's now the middle of my sentence. So we've got beneath the circling crows, and I'm going to now copy my main clause was dropping my capital down to a lowercase. My word was the, and again, I'm just copying my main clause. I've come to the edge of my whiteboard now. You might come to the edge of your book. So as normal, we just go down to the next line. The egg started, whoops, I can rub mine out. You can put a neat line through yours if you make a mistake like I just did. The egg started to crack. And just like I did with my French adverbial, I haven't changed any of the writing. I did the thinking earlier, and I mustn't forget my full stop at the end. When you've completed your sentences, then have a French adverbial with the comma finishing with the main clause. I'm going to let you go and carry on with your writing now. Go back to your ideas of your French adverbials and your main clauses and write them together in full sentences. We can't wait to hear you read some of them to us on your daily phone calls.